This Shabbat is called Shabbat Chazak. The Shabbat of Parashat Vayechi is Shabbat Chazak, the Shabbat of reinforcement. And this is because of the costume of declaring Chazak, Chazak, Venitchazek, which means in Hebrew, be strong, and may you even be more strong, or may you be strengthened. We say this in the conclusion of the Torah reading in acknowledgement of the completion of the book of Bereshit, the book of Genesis. Now, the awareness nurtured by the reading of Vayechi portion generates strength because it is in Vayechi portion that we have Yaakov's blessings that take us to another era, the era of redemption, the era in which we would all be the most powerful and strengthened that we can be. In this portion, Yaakov calls to his sons, to his children, in order to tell each and every one of them what will happen to them in the future, in the end of time. And Yaakov called to his son and says, "Gather yourselves together, and I will relate to you what will happen to you in later days." Now, our sages comment on this verse that Yaakov wished to reveal to his son what will happen in the end of days, but the divine presence, the Shekhinah, which gave him the power of prophecy, actually departed from him. But still, as we can see, in his blessings to his son, the Shekhinah is still there, because the blessings are, in fact, have many prophecies inside them. And to be more exact, it is even well known that in this portion of Vayechi we have like a coded information, very scriptured information that nobody can really figure out, but it's talking about the end of days. It's talking about the coming of the Mashiach. So this implies that even though the Shekhinah was departed from him, and he wasn't really able to see what happens in the end of times, or pronounce what will happen in the end of times, the divine presence was still there with him, because it gave him these coded messages for each and every one of his children. Now, when calling upon his sons to gather themselves together, Yaakov asks them to unite themselves in the deepest sense of the word. And this is for us coming obviously as a lesson. By this act Yaakov is doing, by gathering his sons, by uniting them, the Torah teaches us that only when gathered, only when worthy by union, a concealed knowledge is able to appear. And since the Torah is eternal, the continuing effect of Yaakov's action in his request to gather, to unite his children, to unite the sons of Israel, the brothers together, in this he is actually giving us, as his descendants, the key to the power, let's say, of reaching a state of revelation, to reveal the unknown, the end of days, to know what we don't know yet, or if you prefer, the continuance of our own journey and of our own story in this whole scenery. Now let us take a look at this confusing situation on which the Shekhinah, the divine presence, revealing itself to Yaakov and yet at the same time departures from him. So God wants that we should want to know, and that we should indeed know, so that we should be driven by the desire, this desire of knowledge, or the desire to know or to understand better in whatever circumstances, our situation, our surroundings, our environments, whatever there is. We are driven by a desire, a strong desire to always know and know better and know more. And that so he wants us to want to know, and that but he doesn't want this to come for us as something that is expressed at this moment, because he don't want our deeds to be conditioned by this knowing. He wants all this process to become much more natural, and that we would feel as if our journey, our life, is not dictated by enslavement, but rather it is under certain freedom that we have. And so it helps us by that. So in terms of knowledge, we live our lives in the dark, deprived of any conscious sense of our place in history or in time or in regards to whatever gonna come next. But this is only the surface of our lives. What underlying this surface is the knowing soul, a soul attuned to the supernal timetable and sensitive to the moment most appropriated for revelation, for redemption, because those moments are the state that we actually know, that we reveal something about the world, we reveal something about ourselves. So redemption, we need to be redeemed of our mind, we need to be redeemed of the knowledge, of the constant seeking placement of knowledge in ourselves. So this redemption is also some sort of revelation. It's the revelation of the knowledge that is, in a way, the knowledge is redeemed. Each time that we know something new, we redeem the knowledge. We redeemed ourselves from a state of mind where we did not have any knowledge, and now we do have knowledge. So this is redemption and revelation are kind of the same thing in a way. So let us start this process of redemption. Let us uncover the hidden knowledge that is laying underneath this portion of Vayechi, this extremely beautiful and important lesson for us. In terms of our part in the biblical story, we are now in Egypt, because as I told you before, as you probably know, that this is a journey we are taking together. And in terms of our part in the biblical story, in the stage, in the scenery that we are in now, we are in Egypt, the place in which we are confronted with our worst desires by own free will. In terms of our soul's journey through the cyclical year, we can say, this is a time of confusion from above and confusion from below, a time in which we are placed under spiritual and physical famine, even, we can say. When in Egypt, meaning now, at this point we're in the cyclical time period, just like the children of Israel, we lived in the land of Goshen. We live in the land of Goshen, where we are able to work, we are able to learn, and we are able to live our lives without any interruptions or interference. We too are giving, in a way, many spiritual delights in corporal pleasures. This is important to acknowledge this, though, that our spirit, in our spiritual growth, in our spiritual process, at this point we are in Egypt. The descent to Egypt happens when we lose our vessels of bestowal. In Kabbalistic terms, our Galgalta ve'enaim. I will not go in this right now, but those Galgalta ve'enaim, which are the spiritual parts about us that are actually have the ability to visualize or have the vision, the unknown vision, or the ability to see what's still not happened, or the spiritual essence of things. Those seems to vanish under the control of the will to receive, which is in its worst place is in Egypt. Egypt, it's like the basic, the most initial prototype of the will to receive. This is the place where everything is narrow. Mitzrayim, in Hebrew, you have the word tsar, which is narrow. We are in a narrow place now. Can't really look far, can't really move anywhere. This is a narrow point in time when we are in. And this is, in Kabbalistic ideas, signifies the will to receive. We are consumed by our own wills. However, if we engage in weekly Torah reading, in weekly Torah portion, we can be more aware and alert in terms of our spiritual progress, and can actually play out our role in creation under a fine-tuned way of observation, of observance of the biblical story and of our life's journey in it or in correlations to it. So in the beginning of Sefer Bereshit, in the beginning of the cyclical study of the Torah, we were engaging ourselves to the divine services in high spirit. We were peaceful, we were calm, we were careless, speaking to God as Abraham. Remember, each and every character in the Bible represents a part inside our soul. So if we look at it this way, then in the beginning of the book of Parashat, we were speaking to God as Avraham, and we were nurtured in the divine presence arm as Yitzchak, and we were even maybe floating with angels just as Yaakov did. We were feeling the unconditional love of God always, still remembering the high holidays, uplifting prayers and devotional state of being. And now, as the time progresses and as the story progresses, after a few months, we're beginning to feel otherwise. We begin to withdraw. Our spirituality is no longer what it used to be, or we're sunk in the earthly things, the world in its more broad sense of the meaning. Spirituality no longer shines as it used to. Corporal abstraction reappear, and it seems to us as though the sky or the divine realms are no longer open to us, or even in a way shattered. It's not easy now to enter again the high realms, the holy realms, the divine connection that we have with God is a bit. Something shifted, something is different now. So it is also for us it's a bit more difficult to achieve a higher knowledge because we're in Egypt. Remember, we're not in the land of Israel anymore. So we wish to reach again to that divine presence state and the divine intervention feelings that we had in the past. But we cannot do this. We just can't. It's not the same time, it's not the same scenery, it's not the same story. Time passes and the story progresses, and we with it. So we cannot go to the past, and this is okay, because this is the process, and this is where we are now in the story. So when in Egypt, we crave for spirituality, but the more we long for it, the more we realize how impossible it is to attain it. And we have everything we need and everything we longed for. Under materials matter, we are completely satisfied. We are content. And remember, we're still not enslaved in Egypt. We still live with the presence of Yaakov, of Yosef, of the brothers. We're still not enslaved by the pharaohs. However, in a short while, we would start to be more aware of the pharaoh inside us, and his controlling ways will lead us to an even much more confusing state of mind. It will lead our will to receive to become even more powerful than it is now. And we need to prepare ourselves to this, because this is how the story goes, and we are headed towards there. So that state of mind starts now, as we enter a phase on which a huge screen is starting to appear, preventing us of reaching the full presence of the divine, communicate to God like our ancestors used to do in the book of Genesis. Out of the marvelous journeys and that we had through our ancestral characters and stories, it is the time that we will reckon that we're not in the land of Israel anymore, and that it would take us the rest of the, let's say, the cyclical year to reach to that point again. So we need, we just left the land of Israel, the Holy Land, we entered Egypt, and the rest of the biblical story is not in the land of Israel. It's going to take us to our way there, and it's going to take time. So we remember the divine presence we had while reading about the stories of our ancestors, but we are not really there any longer. And this is where the story takes us, to the exact point in time on which Yaakov is under the same feeling like we are, where the divine presence is there with him, and he had departed from him at the same time. So where have we been and where are we now? Let's try to sum up a bit our journey up until here in the book of Bereshit. When Abraham was in the picture, remember the character of Abraham was inside of us, we felt great love of the divine. and we felt also great love towards the divine. We felt astonishment from the world, and we were wonders of the creation and the Creator. We could communicate with Him, or at least spiritually. We had few divine interventions, even Brit Ben Abtarim, Akedat Yitzchak. We felt the oneness with the divine. We were blessed. We were content. We were on a self-exploration journey with the divine promise of blessings and abundance. We traveled the land, marveled at its beauty, traveled the Holy Land, of course, marveled at its beauty. We won wars and gained a lot of property. We had everything we needed, and we also had a very vivid promise regarding to our future, that we are blessed. Now, when Yitzchak appeared or came into the picture, the great love we had towards the divine or from the divine, in a way shifted to something that is more of an awe. The fear of Yitzchak, if you remember, we talked about it, begins to spread inside us, it began to take over. This fear of Yitzchak is knowing that everything we gained and everything we were blessed for was not really ours, as well as not really assured to us, because with Yitzchak came also his brother Ishmael too. So out of Abraham's grace, as you remember, we talked about the attribute of grace, the attribute of chesed of Abraham, the sharing, the contributing. We began to be in a separate, to divide ourselves into also gvura that came from Yitzchak, the strength, the holding back. And then come Yaakov, the truth. He signifies the truth, the attribute of Tiferet, the truth. And with it also came the complexity of reality and the complexity of living life of faith and holiness in an idol worshipping environment, or in an evil environment, or in general to try and live a life of faith, belief and holiness in a not so in somewhat faithless and unholy environment. We were facing an evil brother, Esav, who seeks to harass us, and a wicked uncle, Lavan, who was a powerful sorcerer who wanted to trick us. So we worked Lavan, dealing with these evil parts inside ourselves, and we went to meet our brother Esav, dealing with those parts, evil parts inside ourselves. And now in the process, we built a much more complex, wider and expanded outlook upon life and reality. We created a family. We rescued divine parts of our soul with which we moved on to the next level. And the next level is now. Now, the Lubavitcher Rebbe says that Yaakov years can be divided into three general periods. We will take those as three phases we are to maneuver through in a way during the last couple of weeks, reading Yaakov's story. The first 77 years of Yaakov's life were spent in the Holy Land, a safe place, in the tents of study, where he was sheltered from the outside world and from the entanglements of material life. These were followed by 20 years in Haran, where he was enslaved or employed by his uncle Lavan, during which he married his wives and fathered 12 out of his 13 children and amassed much material wealth. Later he returned to the land of Israel again, and following a further period in the Holy Land, he then, Yaakov, descends to Egypt, where he lived for the last 17 years of his life. Now, the years that Yaakov dwelled in the Holy Land were years of tranquil perfection, we can say. Years in which nothing alien to his soul, to his godly soul, interrupted him with his divine service to Hashem. However, the years he spent out from the land of Israel, whether it's in Haran or in Mitzrayim, created for him a family, will in the future be creating for him a nation, the children of Israel, He's no longer one small individual. He's no longer only one person. He's now, because of those times when he was not in the land of Israel, when he was outside the land of Israel, those always were the time for Yaakov, where he accumulate wealth, where he accumulate more souls to his family. The years Yaakov lived in Egypt were a time of living in extreme galut, and yet the Torah regards these 17 years of his life as the best years of his life. We obviously know by now that whatever happens to our ancestors and whatever happens in the portion in the biblical story comes as a teaching lessons for us. So what does it mean? What is the lesson? Well, just as Yaakov, we too experienced during the course of our lifetime these three states of being: the sovereignty, the struggle, and the subjugation. And we have probably passed through those without really noticing during the last couple of weeks while engaging and reading the story of Yaakov. But what does it mean for us practically? How does this relate to our day-to-day life? We can harbor a vision of a transcendent self, of a soul, pure and inviolable, as it is in the core of our being. This self, this soul that we are convinced is not subject to the caprice of circumstances and remains forever aloof from the shifting dictates of society and convention. And though this core self is not always accessible to us, there comes moments in our lives, moments of truth we can call them, in which this part inside us, our soul, is influencing us in its most internal and truthful way. But what is being is that just as Yaakov knew how to exploit his galut in Egypt, his time of being out of the Holy Land, being in Egypt, he knew to exploit this time to drive a striving of his soul and further his aims. And we are to do the same thing. We are to act from our soul, or to act upon what our soul desires or our soul calling, even when we feel departed from it. Because remember that it was in Egypt, in that state of galut, under the rules of and subsequent enslavement of the pharaohs, that Yaakov's descendants were forged into the children of Israel, that they were forged into a nation, a huge and powerful nation. Yaakov, just like him, at this point in time, we will be presented with challenges of a different nature than we had experienced previously, obviously. And just as Yaakov, we have probably anticipated these difficulties and so created within us, within this environment, a place we can learn, live, and prosper, our own little land of Goshen. And we must learn from it. We need to always preserve a little place that is our own. Even in this world, material world, there is always the land of Goshen. It's like a place within this place that is important for us to have. Yaakov and his sons did not accept the values of the surrounding culture. Indeed, the descent to Egypt represented a radical transformation for them, or transition, yet motivated by the ancestors' example and guidance, they were able to extend the holy atmosphere of the land of Israel into Egypt. And this is for us means that our unchanging and uninterrupted commitment to our spiritual progress and growth by the ways of Torah and demonstrated the true life with which we are capable of connection with Hashem, of connecting the divine, no matter where we are, Egypt or the land of Israel. Vayechi means and he lived, and the events of this portion reading demonstrates how life offers us a connection to God that transcends material settings, in place and even in time. And still, although this ability of Yaakov and us to create a spiritual center in a foreign environment in Egypt, the ultimate place for Yaakov and his descendants is not in Egypt. but is in the land of Israel. Therefore he called his sons together with the intent of revealing to them what will happen in other times, in times to come, in the future, in which they'll be redeemed from this Egypt place, promising God will be with you and he will bring you back to your ancestors' land. For it is in Eretz Israel, in the land of Israel, and more particularly in the Eretz Israel of the redemption of the redeemed people, or the redeemed land of Israel, that Yaakov and his descendants will fully flourish. So we are in a point in time where we are to remember our true home, the ultimate spiritual environment, our goal, redeemed as free people in the land of Israel. Well, this beautiful and inspiring scenery is still some sort of a theory, because the story of the book of Bereshit, of the book of Genesis, ends with the stage set for the beginning of the enslavement of the next generation of the children of Israel. When the Jewish people left Israel for Egypt, they left behind their natural context, the land of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, the land where they became a people, where their relationship with God and his covenant was initiated and developed, and that this place is also ultimately their played out goal. So however, as long as Yaakov was alive, he was able to reserve this feeling inside his children, this setting, this context, and prevented his children from losing touch with the land of Israel, with the longing to the land of Israel, to this other state of mind. Remember, Egypt is a state. Egypt in the biblical story was a place, but Egypt in Kabbalistic spiritual terms is a state of mind, and so also the land of Israel. So once he passed away, once Yaakov passed away, that link was in a way lost, or presumably lost. And although the Egyptians did not yet begin to actually oppress the children of Israel, their existence became narrow, more strained, without merging context or background. When they looked around them, they saw an alien culture, an alien setting, which they had to close their eyes to shut out from, in order to remain faithful to their true vision. And their true vision promised them by their father was the vision of redemption, the vision of the returning back to the land. And we too now are in an alien setting. Egypt is not our natural place, it's not our natural environment, and what it brings with it is not our preferable state of mind. Yaakov could see no future for his children in Egypt, as their future was in fact elsewhere. And however, as we can leave a place, we never really leave our beliefs or our tradition. We can never really escape our own soul. And the divine is wherever we go to, and our soul accompany us wherever we are. So in each and every state of mind that we encounter, we still have this spark of soul inside us. We still have this connection. The Shekhinah is still there, even though it departed, presumably. As we are entering a time of enslavement in Egypt, a time of enslavement to our earthly desires, we must remember that under all those layers of desires and wishes, there is a higher desire, a desire for the Creator. And so though we are still immersed in the desires of our world, there is always a more subtle and different desire inside us, a desire to be close to the divine, a desire to remain faithful to our soul, to be true to its essence, a desire to come back to the Holy Land. We may not always be completely aware of our desires or understand them, but this is the hidden knowledge. How to get closer to divine presence, how to formulate a true connection, a true relationship with God, with the divine, under whatever settings. This is the part of the story that wasn't revealed to Yaakov, but it is due to be revealed to us, to his descendants in the end of time. And internal desire also, expressed through an external act, as we know. And the external form reflects the internal desire. And Yaakov's act and desire was to gather his children together. His final request, we can say, was to unite them all, because only when united, the hidden knowledge can reappear and educate us. The knowledge can be redeemed, the people can be redeemed. So the people can be redeemed from their own state of mind, false state of mind. So in this portion, when we are concluding the first book of Bereshit, saying the chazak chazak v'nitchazek, be strong, and may you be strengthened, asking our soul to become stronger, when together we are the strongest. And so unite all parts within yourself, of yourselves. Unite the children of Israel inside of you. Be aware of the fact that external Egypt expresses an internal desire we must be redeemed from. And that even there, when in Egypt, it is very much possible to still spread spirituality through physical acts. Unite the parts inside you, and you will reveal the hidden knowledge that will eventually form within you the physical act as well as the internal desire to move on and continue the engagement in the Torah's spiritual journey. You are maybe descendant to Egypt and no longer in the Holy Land, but you are about to create a powerful nation. And this is about to happen already next week, in 7 days from now, and even less. So have a Shabbat Shalom. I hope to see you in the next week, in the beginning of another beautiful Torah book, the book of Shmot.